Adventure in Coma Land by ALostStranger. Read by My Lost and Found. Summary. Midoriya, listen to me, Shouta said, speaking quickly. You are dreaming. This isn't... Oh, I already know this is a dream, the problem child said suddenly, smiling brightly at Shouta. What? Yamada spluttered. Aizawa and Yamada have to go into the mindscape of some of their students and try to wake them up. Of course, Midoriya is going to be an exception. Aizawa Shouta was exhausted. He and Yamada had been jumping through mindscapes for hours, waking up his kids one by one. He'd had to convince Uraraka to leave her perfect life, with her parents living in luxury and all her friends learning in peace and happiness. Her heartbroken expression when she found out it was all a dream still haunted him. Yamada had held a sobbing Ojiro after they managed to convince him that the danger he felt wasn't real. It had just been heartbreaking. The less said about Todoroki's mindscape, the better. Now the both of them stood outside Midoriya's mindscape, preparing themselves to enter. Well, Yamada said, trying and failing to keep up his usual exuberant demeanor. At least after we manage to wake up Midoriya, we can use his help to wake up All Might. I bet it would be much easier to convince Yagi that whatever he's seeing isn't real with his kids' help. Shota's lips quirked at the thought of Yagi's continuous denial of one Midoriya Izuku being his kid. He took a deep breath, preparing himself to see maybe another perfect world from which he had to drag another one of his students from, or maybe an amalgamation of his students' biggest fears. On 3? He asked Yamada. Yamada's lips twitched into an almost smile. 1, 2... Shouta pushed the door. The first thing that Shouta noticed about the place were its walls. The place looked like a crumbling prison, with one steel-locked door off in the far corner, and its tall, looming walls, giving a person an acute sense of claustrophobia, even though the room seemed to stretch out forever. The room was lightly decorated, with small knickknacks lying around in an attempt to make the place look a little more homey. Looks like it's another nightmare, Shouta muttered lowly, looking around in slight discomfort and horror. Is that a vault door? Yamada asked, sounding horrified. Shouta stared and wondered what exactly caused the problem child's worst nightmare to occur in a vault. Suddenly, they both heard a voice yelling in the distance, causing them both to stiffen. They turned to each other, then began stealthily moving towards the direction of the voice. The more they moved, the more Shouta could make out who the voice originated from. It seemed to be Midoriya yelling. As they continued moving forward, a huge room began coming into view in the distance. The walls of the room were falling apart, and the room itself seemed to be furnished with the most mismatched furniture Shouta had ever seen in his life. There were 9 chairs, all arranged around a circular table. All the chairs seemed to look like thrones of various shapes and colors, and the table looked like someone had tried to recreate King Arthur's Round Table without ever actually seeing a table in their life. There were 8 males and 1 female seated on the chairs. They all seemed to be holding a bunch of colorful cards with strange symbols on them. The shortest figure seemed to be yelling at one of the males with a bun. Wait, is that Midoriya? Yamada asked Shouta, sounding confused. Shouta was confused too. If this was a nightmare, why was the problem child sitting with a bunch of strangers holding a bunch of strangely colored cards? That's not all, Yamada continued. Yagi's here too. He pointed at the tallest figure at the table that Shouta hadn't noticed before. It was All Might, but also not. Yagi looked much healthier and maybe a few years younger than he usually did. And was his hair on fire? There is no way Third has so many draw 4s, Midoriya yelled, pointing at the man with the bun. Third? Third grinned. Y'all are just mad I have a natural talent. A man with a high collar, who looked like he was imitating Best Jeanist, nodded. Ninth is right. There is absolutely no way you can have 4 draw 4 cards. Third laughed. You're just jealous I'm on a winning streak. Another man, who looked eerily like an older version of Bakugo, but without a scar on his face, sighed. I've been in the void for so long, I'm just numb to this now. Everyone else started grumbling, and the game continued, but from the place where he was crouching, Shouta could hear the bald man with goggles, who he swore he had seen before, whisper to Yagi. Next time he pulls out a draw 4 card, you hold him down while I search him. I am sure he's cheating. Just before Yagi could answer, Shouta heard a loud gasp from his side. He turned to look at Yamada and saw him staring in horror and pointing at the men sitting on Midoriya's immediate right. Shouta turned to look at the man and was horrified to see the man look like a cleaner, neater version of Shigaraki Tomura. At Yamada's gasp, all 9 members immediately turned to face them, all of them tensing up as if preparing for a fight. Whoever's over there, you have 1 chance to come out, the Shigaraki lookalike said, authoritatively. Shouta and Yamada shared a look and slowly walked out from behind the crumbling piece of wall that they were crouched behind. Midoriya and Yagi gasped. Aizawa and Yamada-sensei, what are you doing here? Midoriya asked them, looking very confused and concerned. And also, why are you here? Yagi asked, looking at them worriedly. Shouta had to hand it to Midoriya. His impression of a younger Yagi was spot on. In the mindscapes of other students, the people in there were just passively lifelike, but they seemed to lack some of the subconscious behaviors and micro-expressions of the real counterparts from which they were based. But this Yagi has the exact same micro-expressions and nervous tics that the real Yagi exhibits. Aizawa was just about to explain the situation to Midoriya, and maybe beg him to wake up, when he was interrupted by the only woman in the group. What proof do you have that you're the real Aizawa Shouta and Hazashi Yamada? She said, looming over them mercilessly, her biceps bulging and looking like they could crush Shota's head with barely any effort. How do we know that you aren't just a trick sent by him to trap Ninth and Toshi? Shouta has no idea who him is, but the way that they all seem to be eyeing each other and re-entering battle stance, he knew he had to defuse the situation before it got violent. Problem child. No, Midoriya, listen to me, Shouta said, speaking quickly. What's the last thing you remember before showing up here? Midoriya squinted and seemed to be thinking hard. We were shopping, I think. All Might, Uraraka, Todoroki, Ojiro, and I had gone to the mall. We had just finished up and were about to meet near the copy shop, and then... Yagi suddenly spoke up. There was a kid. They looked maybe 4 or 5 years old. They said they were lost and that they couldn't find their mother. We were trying to calm them down. Yes, Shouta said. The kid had a quirk manifestation and used it on the 5 of you. Their quirk traps you in your mindscape and plays hallucinations to keep you there. You are dreaming, problem child. This isn't... Oh, I already know that this is a dream, Midoriya said suddenly, smiling brightly at Shouta. What? Yamada sputtered. The rest of the people, minus the Yagi hallucination, looked very amused. Problem child, Shouta said slowly. If you know this is a dream, then why haven't you woken up? I can wake up, Midoriya says, having the gall to look surprised. Shouta sighed and rubbed his head. He should have figured that Midoriya's dream would be the most complicated. Speaking of Midoriya's dream... Midoriya, Shouta says, gesturing to the crumbling, weirdly furnished prison cell. Where's the perfect life you don't want to leave? Is this it? The bald man with goggles barks out a rough-sounding laugh. Ha! This? A perfect life? Not likely. Some of us consider this purgatory. A white-haired man with a scar along his eye, and the Best Genus cosplayer nodded solemnly to this. Then where's the horrible nightmare? Yamada asked furtively, looking around in an attempt to catch sight of anything that might be lurking along the walls. The Shigaraki lookalike points to the vault door at the side of the room. "We keep him in there," he says, smiling confusedly. "It wouldn't do us good to see his ugly mug every time we try to relax." The Bakugo lookalike cuts in crassly. Now that Shouta looks at the Shigaraki lookalike better, he can see that the man doesn't look that much like Shigaraki. In fact, his eyes are eerily similar to Midoriya's, right down to the white pupil and the shade of green. Shouta sighs and pinches his nose, trying to fight back an oncoming headache. "You know what? I don't have enough energy for this. Problem child, since you, for some godforsaken reason, already know that this is a dream, can you please wake up so we can get this whole thing over with?" Midoriya turned and shared a look with Yagi and the rest of the people before turning back to Shouta. "Sure, Aizawa-sensei," he said, smiling. "Or how do I wake up?" Aizawa stared at him, not really comprehending what he was saying. The other students exited their mindscapes the moment they became aware they were in their minds and not awake. He had no idea how someone who had already known that they were dreaming stayed in their mindscape in the first place, let alone how to get out. Thankfully, the Yagi dream bot seemed to have an idea. "Young Midoriya, why don't we just concentrate really hard on waking up?" he said, sounding very much like the real Yagi. "Okay, All Might," Midoriya said. The entire mindscape seemed to glow a little before the floor dropped beneath Shouta and everything went black. Shouta woke up blearily in the UA infirmary. He could hear Yamada groaning next to him, also waking up from trapezing around their students' minds. He slowly sat up and rubbed his eyes. He turned and saw that both Midoriya and Yagi were also waking up from their quirk-induced slumbers. "Thank you for reminding us to get out, Aizawa-kun," Yagi says to him, smiling. Shouta squints at him. "Yeah, if you hadn't told us to wake up, All Might and I would have still been playing Uno," Midoriya said, grinning sheepishly. They both turned to smile at each other. "Wait a minute," Shouta thinks slowly to himself, his sleep-addled brain sluggishly processing information and putting some thoughts together. "We never even got to Yagi. How?" You were in there too?" Shouta and Yamada yelled, pointing at Yagi. "Oops." Okay, so this is the first podfic I'm recording in my dorm room at university. I'm so worried that my roommates might hear me because I've got like a suite style, but I literally have class in half an hour. I need to like leave now to make it. It's my first this is my second day of classes, so it's just like explaining stuff. Anyway, first podfic recorded here. If there's any like weird problems, please point them out if it's different. I'm trying to like work things out. I know, I hope you enjoy this podfic. It's really good. They accidentally found their way into the One for All mind space and didn't even realize it, like Aizawa and Yamada. And the Uno. The ghosts play Uno. This is just a commonly known fact. I'm glad this is like consistent through everywhere. They just play Uno. What else are you gonna do when you're stuck in a void for all of eternity? You know, pretty good. Pretty good deal. Anyway, see you next time.